How can your law firm go to the next level with the fine art of automation? On today's Pollinator Podcast. Well, Lisa, thank you very much for being with us here today and talking about one of the hot things that's on everybody's mind, AI and automation. And I want to get in and really kind of understand your path because you've had an interesting path to this place. But I think one of the big questions that I wanted to ask you first, and hopefully you can explain to everybody, is what is the difference in AI and automation? Because we're hearing these things thrown out a lot, and people seem to be conflating these a lot, and they do overlap and do some interesting things. But for a law firm owner, what should they be thinking about, or how should they be thinking about these two things as different concepts?
Absolutely. Great question. And you're right. Like the market is absolutely saturated with products and conversations around AI. And I'm talking primarily about automation. So, what's the difference? With AI, we're looking to mimic the way that a person thinks about something. And with automation, we're really just replicating the manual behavior that a person takes at a computer. We don't need AI to do that. So, with automation, you're looking at processes that you want to have consistent execution and 100% accuracy. So with automation, you're not going to get those hallucinations. You're not going to get that inconsistent execution. You're not going to create all that additional work. Not to say that there aren't places for AI, but automation, with specifically robotic process automation, we can achieve 100% accuracy.
For a law firm, and obviously vastly different types of law firms and vastly different types of sizes and different practice areas and what they're going to do. But like in general, if you're a small law firm owner, say under 3 million in revenue, you've got a handful of associates and a team of paralegals and some legal assistants. Like, what would be an example of some of those robotic processes that would be prime candidates to be replaced with automation?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, the way to think about it is we're almost never looking to automate the entire process. Okay. So we're taking a process and then we are identifying which elements of that process can be automated. So for law firms, there are use cases in every practice area, but just to pick one that's kind of, agnostic as far as practice, might be like onboarding a new client. So regardless of the type of law the firm is practicing, there's probably some sort of workflow that involves collecting data, information from a client along with documentation, potentially tax return, driver's license, business documents, etc. And then there's a person typically copying and pasting that information into a CRM or a CMS, maybe into a financial software. Maybe if it's a larger firm, they have some sort of a help desk or something, but there's some sort of there's this manual process of onboarding that new client into all the firm's systems. So there's a huge components of that can be automated, where you're talking about the copying and pasting, the uploading and downloading, the renaming, the resaving, the generating documents, all of those
manual data entry.
Exactly. All of those elements that are by rote, they're according to a set of rules, they're standardized, they're consistently executed. No matter what's coming in, you're going to go through the same process to get that person onboarded into the system. That's sort of a universal example. The way that we're working with this technology, robotic process automation, is every solution is fully customized to meet the client exactly where they are with the operations, the way they're doing them. So it's not like, we have a bot that does onboarding, or we have a bot that does, estate documentation, or we have a bot that does divorce documents. What we do is we build a bot that the client needs, depending on where they are generating the most manual, repetitive, time-consuming processes.
I'm sure you have plenty of stories. I think by the time people have kind of grown to a bigger, small firm, a lot of times they forgot all the processes that they used to have to do when they were just hung up the shingle and were doing it on their own. And maybe there were some processes that they weren't even doing at the time. So what's like your favorite example story of where you were able to go into a team and automate some of the processes, and like what was the outcome
Sure.
of doing that?
Well, my favorite idea right now is for injury lawyers. So, personal injury lawyers, med mal, attorneys have to obtain medical records for their clients. And it is a very standard, rules based, tedious, time consuming, repetitive, error prone process. It checks all the boxes of everything we look for opportunities for automation. So we're doing this in a few different ways with different clients, but one of our clients, who is about a 45-person firm in Virginia, they have a medical record department of about 6 people. And we automated the process, which involves identifying clients that need medical records, creating a HIPAA high-tech authorization form, which indicates that the attorney is authorized by the client to collect the records, transmitting the records to the appropriate provider in the appropriate way, and then marking the record, requested. And then several weeks later, going to download those medical records, name them appropriately, save them in the right place, mark the task complete. Okay. So that's basically the process that most firms are going to go through. Even if they've outsourced the records to another company, it's still a very similar process. So we've automated that process for them. And we actually just got feedback a few weeks ago from the manager who says that the bot is saving her 6-person team 3 days a week. And she no longer has to work nights and weekends to stay caught up on the medical records. So she's saying it's a lifesaver. Yeah, it's changed her life. And really everyone in the department, it's changed their lives, because prior to the robot, they were spending a good 70-80% of their day doing this work that I just described, which is, this is very
Tedious.
boring, soul killing work, right? Nobody's getting fulfillment out of that kind of work. Now, as soon as the bots were deployed, that most of their days are spent actually solving the problems from the records that come in, evaluating them. Is everything there? Does it reconcile with the other documents? Is anything missing? And picking up the phone, solving problems, having to actually do human stuff. So everybody's happier. And the clients are happier. Everything's happening faster. No mistakes are being made. So it's really a life changer in terms of how it creates a different way to work.
Well, and I think if people actually thought about those processes, because I'm sure you've never run into a law firm where the process was just there or like in somebody's head and not actually documented.
That's more common than not.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
And in all aspects, we see that on the the marketing and intake and stuff too.
Yeah.
But it's like every point, every step in that process is another point of failure.
Yeah.
To like use the engineering terms. And it's like somebody just forgets to send one email, and now all of a sudden that 2 weeks has gone by. It's like, where is this record? We need this record to fit in and get ready for this deposition. Why do we not have this record? And you go back and you find, oh, somebody didn't actually check the box, or they didn't mark the task complete for the next thing to go. And like every time there's that manual input, it becomes a huge problem. And from our side on the we do marketing and intake and the sales side, and so we try to get folks to automate as much of that process as possible too. And it's little things like you've got an after hours answering service, and we had this happen with a client recently that they were really appalled by the call quality of the answering service. They said that we lost a client because of this, but we actually get into and listen to the recording, and it's like, that's not why you lost that client. Like, yeah, it was bad, it could be improved, but she did everything technically she was supposed to do, and she sent the email, and it was on a Friday evening, right? So everybody's out of the office, everybody's gone for the weekend, and then Monday morning there's this big stack of emails, and the receptionist is going through these emails and seeing all these emails from things that came over the weekend, and missed the fact that this person had specifically asked to speak to so and so, or it was mislabeled in the automation or the email that didn't go in, and it got overlooked. And so now all of a sudden it's a week later.
Yeah.
They find the email, they try to call the person, but that person's already gone. And it was a referral from somebody else. And so now this person is like really off put. The referral partner is ticked off. Like, it's a bad experience
That is bad.
all the way around.
Yeah.
And so it's like how can those things be improved with the automation? And what I have to tell people all the time is like, look, you can buy all these systems, you can buy fancy, CRMs that have these capabilities, you can get into all these other tools. But if you don't have your process actually documented like on paper, written out on a chalkboard or in a flow chart somewhere where you've actually said step one, step two, this is what has to happen. No piece of software is going to be able to fix it.
Right.
And I think I see that happen. That's probably one of the biggest frustrations I hear from people is like, oh yeah, I bought this software, I paid for this fancy software, it's supposed to do all these amazing things, and it breaks all the time. And it's like, right, garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a really common experience, and I talk about that a lot in the legal services field, where I think it's just like this mounting frustration in the whole experience. So you've got these firms that will buy into this technology because they have these bells and whistles, and then they'll realize that they actually have to pay more for the bells and whistles that they wanted, right? Premium. Right. And then they get in there and there's so many available customizations that it's actually now they realize something that's going to cost dozens of hours and maybe thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars to set up correctly. Right. And then they have to typically contort their operations to fit into the offered functionality. So then you've got them using non-preferred technology or non-preferred methodology just to make it work, right? And then 6 months later, they'll come back and say, I'm not really happy with it, never really figured out how to use it right, I'm not getting my money's worth, and they're not happy. So what I love about what Techromatic is doing with robotic process automation for lawyers is we're bypassing all of that by building what the firm needs and only what the firm needs. So you don't have to pay for things you're not using. Like you don't have to buy this big platform where you're not using all this different functionality. And yes, we do optimize the process. We don't automate a clunky process. We optimize it. But at the same time, we're not saying you have to buy this other platform or you have to do things in a completely different way. We're still working with the way the firm wants to do things. And what's really fascinating is that it has a really robust return on investment in different ways for different firms. So like one of our clients is a very small estate planning firm, a husband and wife team with about 3 or 4 admins. And when we were we're doing the discovery for the process, and as you mentioned, nobody has written SOPs. No one does. No one. But that's okay, because that's what we're here for. So we're going to look at the process click by click, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to figure out the best way to do it and the best way to automate it. But what we found with this client is that it wasn't so much of a time savings. It's like they weren't concerned that, oh, it's going to be great that the bot does this 30 times faster. The concern for them was that dropped ball, was that somebody gets a text and forgets to click send, or a new client comes in and this client gets dropped because this one's urgent, or things just fall by the wayside. So they have this onboarding process for prospective clients, and they're just feeling like it's just taking too long and it's clunky. And by the way, they don't even have high tech. They use Microsoft Office basically for everything. But we're able to automate where anything, it's on the computer, we can probably automate in it. So we're just building these bots that are essentially a digital assistant that's going to help to onboard these prospects and move them through the pipeline so that nothing falls through the cracks.
Can you explain that process a little bit more? Like when people start getting into like what it sounds like to me, you're describing is like this custom built piece of software. And is that so like it's its own program and it is there to link the platforms that folks are using? Like they have a CRM, right? And that then they have their case management system, and people talk about APIs and native integrations that these things to do. But then there are some things that just don't talk to each other, or like the bane of my existence is my case, because they love to get access to their API. You got to pay like $25 or $30 per seat per month just to have access for every user, even though it may only be one user, just the intake team. So that becomes this like huge barrier to be able to integrate stuff to it. And then so you're stuck left with like one of these bridge programs like Zapier,
Right.
and people don't really know how to set those up.
Right.
Like, is there a way around that? Is that like what you're building, something that exists out of those
Yes.
connections?
Yeah, it's none of those things. The thing is, if you understand Zapier, imagine Zapier like on steroids with superpowers operating in the multiverse, and that's robotic process automation, right? So with Zapier, there's a finite number of activities that you can automate with a finite number of software applications that it integrates with. And then you have to
Right.
set everything up, and it's sort of linear, and it's not it's limited. Okay, so with RPA, we're doing essentially, very similar type of technology in terms of that's how we're like linking things together, but we're not limited.
Sure,
Theoretically,
sure.
if a person can do it on the computer, we can develop the bot to do the same thing. Now, there are, some things that are a little trickier, some forms of multi-factor authentication, or some screens may scroll really fast and present a problem for the bot. So there's little things like that, but most of them we can work with, right? So what you asked about, like, what the technology is, like, so what is it? So it is a software. It's a low code, and I'm putting that in air quotes for the listeners. It's a low code environment, a drag and drop visual programming environment with, thousands and thousands of options, and it's integrated with, AI assistance and machine learning and all of that. So we have the platforms and we build the automations, and then we load the software onto a computer of the clients. So the bot gets a dedicated workstation, usually virtual, but it could be a laptop, but we don't recommend that. So it's a
Sure.
dedicated virtual workstation. The bot actually gets its own email address, and that's a fun part where the client can kind of decide, do they want to be forward facing about having a bot, or make it, John, at firm or whatever. And then the bot also gets all of its own credentials to access any of the technology that's used to do the work. So the bot
Okay.
needs a license to Clio, and the bot needs to access Adobe and DocuSign or whatever it needs to touch. It needs credentials, right? So instead of hiring a person where you would give them a computer and an email address and usernames and passwords, and then somebody's going to sit next to that person and train them on how to do the job, right? Instead, you're training my team. So you meet with me and my senior RPA engineer, and we record the call. And sometimes it's 2 hours, sometimes it's more, but we're really going click by click through the process to figure out exactly what you're doing now. How can we optimize it? Which parts can we automate now? Which parts do we want to automate later because they're more complicated? And which parts are we leaving for a human?
So if I'm tracking with you, it kind of sounds to me like operator agents, that where you see like OpenAI talk about like they can log into a website and like do all this stuff, and they're doing with anything. This isn't, the AI to do that, but it's operating in a similar fashion where it's got its own workstation, it has its own credentials. So if you were going to connect to like, pipe drive that you're using for CRM, and you were going to connect it to something like my case, so it's like
So, sort of.
actually logging into my case
Yes,
and
but the
entering
user,
stuff.
you're not doing that. So, unlike an AI agent, the bots are not like responsive. It's not like you ask the bot to do something and it does it for you.
Right.
It is really like think of it like a digital worker. Think of it like like an actual robot typing on a computer, only it's living in the computer. And
Right.
it can communicate, like it can send you an email and it can receive an email, but it's not, it has to be programmed to know what it looks for in the email and what to do as a result of what it finds in the email. If your company becomes a client of Techromatic, we don't just do lawyers, but let's say you become a client of Techromatic. We are building a bot that does a very specific set of activities in a specific order with parameters, etc. You wouldn't be using the bot, again, air quotes. You might
Right.
email the bot, generate estate documents, but you're not interacting back and forth in an AI way.
What you're building is we see these big fancy assembly line robots, and they can do all these things and like weld cars, right? But it is still programmed to do like that particular task, and it will do it over and
Right.
over and over and over again, and do it at a very high level, high efficiency, high accuracy, um, to be able to do that. But it's ultimately programmed just to do that particular task. And you're not like going into this bot and saying, you design my next car and
Right.
build it for me.
Right.
And or something like out of Iron Man or whatever, where he
Right.
could just tell Jarvis like,
Yeah.
spin this up, and it's doing that.
Right.
And I think to something you said before, because everybody's kind of playing with AI, and lawyers are getting trouble in some ways for using AI. But I still don't think it's quite there in terms of developing those
It's
things. Like
not.
you can tell it in like those hallucinations, or
No, forget it.
it comes up, it's trying to make you happy, and it's trying to
No.
understand what you want, but like you still have to get in there and just like training an employee.
Yes.
Like if you want a entry level employee to come in and do some robotic task, you're gonna have to tell them like step 1, step
Right.
2, step 3, step 4.
Right. So what we're doing is we're going beyond that one like assembly line function, and we're streaming a bunch of those together, and it can be very deeply conditionally logical. So it can be very complicated. It can be super complex. As long as it is just according to a specific set of rules, we can do it. So for example, with probate, we have a bot. This is for a different estate planning firm, where we built a bot that essentially does about 4 hours of probate administration work in just 8 minutes. Okay. So what it does is when the managing partner gets a death certificate and emails it to the bot will take the data out of the death certificate, put it into a database, and then email the paralegal there's a new client for intake. Okay. Then the paralegal will do intake into this database, right? Now the paralegal will check off all of the documents that are necessary for that particular case. They'll see a list of all the documents that are possible and check off the ones for that case, click save. And once that happens, the bot is triggered. It will copy and paste everything from the intake form into the case management software, and it will generate all the documents. So that's part of their software. We didn't have to reinvent it, but we have the bot manipulate it. So the bot will go and it'll generate every document. It'll save it in a new file named for the client, and then it'll send a link to the paralegal saying, please look at these documents and approve them. So there's again human oversight. So now the paralegal goes in, reviews the documents, says yes, approved, and now the bot puts them through DocuSign. And so the bot does everything in DocuSign, puts them through, stamps them, sends reminders, the whole bit. When the bot gets an email from DocuSign that it's ready, then the bot emails the attorney for final approval. And when the attorney approves, the bot will actually go to the eCourt website and file the documents with the court. And then when the court emails back with the case number and the court date, the bot is going to update the firm records, add the case number everywhere it belongs, create an event on the firm calendar, email it to the attorney so they show up in court. And you're talking about literally 4 hours, not 4 hours of stamping the same thing over and over again, 4 hours of distinct task work that happens over a period of weeks, and it's being condensed to just a few minutes.
There's some very interesting things to think about in the applications for this. But you started off your career with a bachelor's in sculpture and like fine arts.
Yes.
Like, so how have you come from a background in fine arts now to being in the cutting edge of the high tech space and designing these kinds of systems?
Well, it has been a windy road from those days. College was all about like what I loved to do. So I majored in fine art with a concentration in sculpture, and I also did a ton of acting in college. And people convinced me you should move to New York City, be an actor, move to New York City. I moved to New York City. I did not want to be an actor because being an actor basically meant being a bartender, and I had done that in college. I didn't want a waitress. I didn't want to bartend. And so I got a job at an investment bank, and they were very generous in their education and said, feel free to, get certified. So I got certified in my Series 63 and my Series 7 to be a stockbroker. And then they said, well, we're not going to promote you here. It was a bit of an old boys club. So then I went to work for Merrill Lynch, and I was a broker for Merrill Lynch for a while, and that is honestly, believe it or not, where I really honed my sales skills. I wasn't much for finance,
I believe it.
but all about the sales. But I really did not like the environment. It just wasn't a match for me. And then I spent several years working in technology and selling technology, various types. At which point I kind of merged both of those, and I was a recruiter for tech people in finance. Okay, so I'm still kind of trying to make all these pieces fit together. Then 9/11 happened, and that business was kind of decimated. And at that point, I decided to work for my then, I don't know if we were married yet, either fiance or husband then, now ex-husband, but I decided to work for his law firm. I did that for over 15 years. So I managed his law firm. It was a small firm. It was me. It was an assistant or a secretary, usually a couple lawyers. And I managed that firm for over 15 years. And then, divorce, what's next? Kind of trying to figure things out. Went back to finance for a minute, still don't like it. And then Paul Smith, the CEO of Techromatic, was telling me about this cool technology he was using called robotic process automation. And he was building these software robots for a healthcare company. This company was a rather large behavioral health clinic, fully virtual. And he was telling me about these bots, and I just thought, God, this is so fascinating. And at first, of course, I had the same nervousness a lot of people do, but I ended up doing some research, becoming really interested in the technology, seeing that it wasn't really replacing jobs any more than any other technological advancement does, but that it was really opening up a pathway towards a better working experience where people don't have to do the grunt work. And my immediate thought was this would be amazing for lawyers, because after working 15 years in a law firm, and my ex-husband has a very, very general practice, so I got a taste of a lot of different types of law. There's so many documents, there's so many processes where you do want consistent execution, you want 100% accuracy, and it's not legal work. And the best work I did for him was form relationships with clients and do kind of light level legal work. And all the rest was just the BS that you had to do, to keep things afloat. It's not real legal work, right? So at the time, Paul kind of had to talk me down from the lawyer dream because the technology was really, really expensive. It was like $300,000-$400,000 a year just to get started on a fairly simple automation. So we were in healthcare. So that's kind of where I threw my focus, and I learned all about the technology. I learned a lot about healthcare and revenue cycle management and back office healthcare. But then we found a new set of tech partners, specifically one that basically had a very similar platform as the one we were used to with the more expensive solution. And this tech partner essentially democratized the technology, made it so that we can build as many bots as we want for as many clients as we want without charging licensing fees. And so that has enabled us to bring the cost down to a fraction of the price. So it's about a tenth of the price that it used to be, or that it still is if you're a huge company looking at it, but we just do it in a different way. So here I am now. I think that was kind of a long-winded answer on a long-winded career, but where I am now, really capitalizing on that law firm experience and my knowledge of technology. And yes, I've come a far way from sculpture and acting.
Well, now you're just sculpting in a different kind of way than creating these systems. My Shannon and I interviewed a couple we know that run an art gallery. So the older I've gotten, the more I've come to appreciate the application of art into all these things. And I kind of want to ask you, so when you were administering this law firm, like, did you have SOPs?
Yes. Actually, we did, but they were very rudimentary. Most of them I put together just because I have a very process oriented mind. I'm great at selling. I'm an evangelizer for the things I believe in, but I really have a very process systems mindset. So my brain always wants to go to, can we write an instruction book for this, right? And the law firm had these really clunky methods because when you start in business on your own, you do what works for you, right? And then you add more people, and then you're kind of trying to scramble to make it accessible. But it really wasn't. So when I came to the firm, it was kind of a mess, in terms of the systems. Like there were, some clients were under their last name, some under their first name, some under their business name, some under the DBA name. It was silly. So yes, so I did create some SOPs with regards to opening files, opening new matters. A couple things that we did a lot of were orders to show cause, which is a very common emergency motion that you make to the court. And there's only one of there's like a few different variations. So once I realized that they're essentially the same every time, I put together like an instruction book of like how to do, because I knew we were going to be hiring more people, and I didn't want to have to sit there and train everybody, click by click. Like I wanted somebody to be able to read something and learn how to do it. But I think it takes a certain mindset to not take for granted. Like I see it even when I do my workflow discoveries, when I'll say to people, you're going to walk me through click by click, start to finish. And it's a struggle. Like sometimes they'll start in the middle and what happens before that? What happens before that? What happens before that? Or they'll all be in one screen and then there's in another screen. I'm like, wait, what did you click? How did you get there? What, so it's a mindset.
Yeah. And man, and it can be super frustrating because I know, and nothing on the scale of what you are building there, but sometimes even just inside platforms, like, we moved people off of, some of the more rudimentary CRMs into some of these more advanced platforms. And, again, it kind of comes with trade-offs that now it's you're opening up this whole new world of possibilities when it comes to tracking and reporting and automations on the marketing and intake side, but that you do have to go through the build out. And I've been in those conversations like, all right, like show me what is in your CRM now, or sometimes just your spreadsheet, and like walk me through the process. And they're like, all right, that's it. That's everything that happens. All right, you sure there's nothing else? Like, what if this, the contingency? Like, no, that happens. All right, let's go build this pipeline for you. We're going to build this. It's going to send this. And then all of a sudden it's like, why is this doing this? Because that's what you told me it happened. That's what happens. Right. And they're like, oh, no, we can't send it now. And like, it has to be, this has to happen, or we have to do this, and this. And like, oh, well, that was unfortunately left out of this process, but we will go in and fix it. And yeah, it can definitely be very frustrating. And so we've gotten much better at like letting people know that is likely to happen if they don't come with everything like we're going to be discovering as we go, and there's going to be some adjustments, and there's going to be some growing pains. And like, do not assume that just because you are buying this new sparkly thing over here that it is going to work out of the box. And I think that's one of those big frustrations to kind of like wrap around what we were talking about at the beginning is like you say, it's not even just the licenses and the things that people have to pay. Now it's 10, 20, 30 grand to get it built out, or it means that's what you're going to be doing over the weekend. And now you have to go learn how to be a programmer and all those things. And for some people, they want to do that, but
it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Other folks, it doesn't.
For most businesses, and we run into that problem as well. And so what we've done, we've kind of honed the process as we go. We're kind of pioneers because nobody's really using this technology in this way in this industry. So we're kind of figuring it out as we go along. But we have a big portion that we refer to as business analysis. So before we're even engaged, I have that discovery process with a prospective client where we're going through the process. And like I said, I do it with my engineer. We interrupt, 11 times to, make sure we're getting every click. We're talking about exceptions. We're talking about variations. Then my team, my development team and my business analysis teams are going to go over that video like 27 times. They pull out all the screenshots and they put together this really detailed process design that shows all the clicks that they're currently doing. Then they put together a solution design that kind of shows how we intend to automate it. And then we spent a lot of time with the prospective client going over that and asking them to go over it to understand this is now going to be the scope of work. So you need to spend some time in the chart to make sure that we've covered everything. And then once we're engaged, and we do this because we can't accurately scope the work until we have all this information. We don't know how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take until we get all of this. So then once we're engaged, we spend the first, 2 to 4 weeks in more business analysis where we're going even deeper and we're validating every single click. But because even with that, even though we do all of that, things still happen like you described, where somebody says, we also want to do this document, we also decide, this parameter, right? This new rule.
Oh, can this do this too?
Let's just add
Let's
this.
just add that
Right,
into.
right.
Yeah.
So what we've done in order to both accommodate those requests and have a cap on it is, depending on your level of engagement with us, we grant up to 8 development hours in the account each month. So those I didn't mention before, but we do this on a SaaS model. There's an implementation and development fee that happens once up front, and then we charge a monthly fee where we support and maintain the bot, keep it working, respond to help tickets, respond to tweaks or updates. But anything that enhances the functionality of the bot is essentially out of scope. So we've got this up to 8 hours in your account every month. We let it bank up to 40. So that when you do say, listen, gee, it's great that the bot can do this. Can it also do this? Yeah, it can. But then we just have to take a look at what kind of development that's going to involve. And if it's, if we do it smart, we can do, a relatively, not hugely significant, but a somewhat significant enhancement every few months. And so we look at it as an iterative process. We're looking to just continue to build the best bot that it can be. And then when we're satisfied, you can use those hours towards another automation. But what that does is it takes the pressure off Techromatic, but also the law firm or the client, because none of us have done this before, right? Everything's customized. So we haven't built this bot for you. You haven't built this bot for us. So we don't want either side to be pressured to think of every single thing we need to think of to build the bot, because that's not a realistic expectation, especially given, as we've discussed, most people do not have written SOPs. So they're not going to be able to hand me a binder and say, here's my process, right? So we're not going to figure out every exception, and we're not going to think about every single thing because we're humans. So what we do instead is just leave room so that when we figure out, when you see this is something else you want, great, let's add it in. Do you have the hours? Do you want to wait until you bank the hours, or you want to just bill you for the change? And then the client kind of gets to pace the progression.
Right. Now that's a great way to go about it, and for people to be aware in doing that. You alluded to it a little bit earlier, and I would imagine you get asked a lot. But if somebody's looking at coming now, building one of these bots now can automate a lot of the grunt work, and that's taking up a lot of time, and they may have some of those lower level legal assistants, the people who are filing things or collecting that data and stuff, and they've got a team of 3 or 4 of those people, and now you're saying, all right, we can build this bot and it can do the work of 3 or 4 people in the same time. What do you tell them when they ask us, what am I going to do with these people?
Right. So the technology is not replacing humans, because again, it's not AI, it's really just the replication. And in most small to mid-sized law firms, those firms aren't big enough for people to have a job that's just a singular stamp. So what we're doing is, like I said, we're almost never automating A to Z. We're automating components. We still need humans involved, especially at law firms. We need human oversight. But again, back to what I said was most valuable when I was managing the law firm were those personal relationships, right? And so it's about a bit of a mindset shift. So one is first understanding that we're not automating everything. We're just automating the straightforward, by rote, rules-based, standardized things, right? We're leaving humans in the loop for the rest. And then the other part of that mindset is what I personally believe, which is that most humans are capable of more than what they're called upon to do in their 9-to-5 job. Okay. So what that means is when you offload grunt work from their plate, you are making room for something else. So it's not just, so when what is that something else? Well, it might be more grunt work until there's more automation, but ultimately it's probably going to be more time to do those more valuable activities like holding the client's hand or doing some research or putting together a document that's not systematic like that. And those tasks and those elements of work are going to be more fulfilling to the person. So you're actually uplifting that person's job. You're changing that job for the better. But I want to say one more thing about that. And this is kind of a mistake that we can learn from, that the biggest companies in the world, who've been using this exact technology for almost 20 years and making a ton of money with it. But some of them failed. And a lot of them have failed in their not the company, but the automation journey failed because they didn't properly communicate to their staff. So what happens if you start telling your admins and your secretaries, get on a meeting with Elisa at Techromatic and let them know everything you do because Techromatic's going to build a software robot. Obviously that person is not going to be too thrilled about that, right? So I have to do this because a lot of people come in that way. And so I have to kind of let them know that this is not going to take their job. And the way I do that, and this is the way that I would recommend that business owners talk to their people when they're considering automation, is by asking things like, what is on your plate that you haven't been able to get to because you're bogged down by this paperwork? And asking what do you like most about your job and what do you like least about your job? Because chances are the least is going to be something automatable and the most is going to be something more valuable to the firm, right? Then you can even ask questions like, do you have any skills that you would like management to be aware of? Have you identified any skills that you would like to learn that you think are applicable to your job? Do you have any ideas about your job? And when you start asking these questions, you create an expansive mindset in the person so that then when the person has said, get on the phone with Elisa, get on this call with Elisa at Techromatic and show her team everything you do to generate prenup agreements, that person is not going to be thinking, this is going to take my job. That person is going to be thinking, this is going to give me time to get to these other things. This is going to give me time to work on this skill or develop that skill or talk to management about this idea that I have. So it's just a different mindset.
Well, and I think people have to have that mindset of that people are capable of doing a lot more. And one of the questions that we've actually asked in our own team to kind of reframe that is, if we were to hire somebody else to take off some of the entry level tasks or the repetitive tasks or the things like that, what would be the task that you would love to give to somebody else so that you could focus on the things you enjoy the most? Right. And then they'll come up with those tasks and like, chances are those are the automatable.
There's your automation
things.
List. Yep.
Because what it's really like two key things that I took from what you were saying right there. Like, if you think about the problem solving, right? Because automation isn't going to do problem solving.
Right.
That's going to need a human or maybe eventually some artificial intelligence, but that's definitely not the automation side of things. And then just the client service. Like, how many law firms do we know that it's like the number one bar complaint, that the lack of communication, the lack of personalized service, or somebody being there to hold their hand.
Yeah.
And attorneys I know get frustrated sometimes, like, these clients need me to hold their hand. I'm like, yeah, they do, because they're going through a
tough time,
a tough
expensive
time.
Absolutely.
With something that they don't understand, and they're just left feeling helpless in the dark, not knowing what's going on. And so, like, what if you just turned all that time that you said you would do to improving the client experience and being able to do deeper research or doing a better project, if you had the time and the manpower to be able to do those things?
Yes.
Well, here you go.
It's a no-brainer.
Probably those people would enjoy that.
It's a no-brainer. I mean, we know that not all lawyers are super tech forward, but really for those that see that the technology is out there doing things that they should be leveraging, automation is key. It is absolutely key. And with all this hype about AI, which, let's face it, It's like you said earlier, it's not there yet. It's not there yet. It's not reliable. It's not consistent. You're not going to get 100% accuracy. I just encourage people to just like put all of that aside for a minute and just go through your day to day and your team's day to day and just start to think about which components of of my work do not actually require my legal expertise. And that's going to start to develop a list of things to automate. And once we get a bunch of those that are in the same process, we have a bot.
Very good. Very good. Well, Elisa, I really do appreciate you taking the time to come in and answer all my questions about this. I hope they're the questions other people have been asking too, and now we'll be able to share those out there. So
great. Thank you so much for having me. As you can tell, I can talk about it forever. So this is a great conversation.
Yeah, I'm sure we could go on and on, but thank you so much.
My pleasure.